This is the battery of the electric surfboard that I am building right now. It is big, heavy, powerful and sometimes also a bit terrifying. Fuck. Please, just don't ask. I can absolutely not recommend shorting such a battery by accident. But anyway, that doesn't matter now. This battery needs proper charging. To accomplish that, I built this. A 1.5 kilowatt plug-in charge solution which is supposed to handle everything of importance. But why put so much work into a simple charger? There are so many different products on the market and a lot of them work great. Well, there's a little catch with how my charger battery setup is arranged, which requires a sort of special solution. You might also wonder why there are two charging stations in the thumbnail. The reason is that I made some enormous design errors in the first version. And that left me with no choice but to correct them in the second revision. But before it gets too confusing, just let me tell you the whole story. Quick note before we continue. This project involves high energy batteries and mains voltage. Everything you're about to see is part of a private experimental setup. It's not a tutorial and I don't recommend replicating it without proper experience and safety precautions. Alright, back to the story. It all started when I was building the battery quite some time ago. Because if you build a battery, you need a way to charge it. So I tested around a little bit and at some point I thought that I had it figured out. And that turned out to be a problem. A few weeks ago I started with building the actual charger. The number one question was which power source I could use. The easiest way to get about 60 volts DC from the power grid are switched mode power supplies. And I already had that older strategy, which I thought would work great. The plan was to connect 3 simple 400 watt power supplies in parallel. That would have given me 1.2 kilowatts of power and a fully charged battery after 3 to 4 hours. So I jumped into CAD, created a drawing and started to make the thing. I used this guy for the enclosure and milled the panels on my CNC. Most of the parts that I needed for assembly had arrived and it was time to complete the charger. But then I realized that what I was doing wasn't smart at all. Not because of one small detail, but because the entire concept breaks down once you look at how the power supplies actually behave. There were 2 major mistakes in this design. The first one was connecting standard switched mode power supplies in parallel. It looks like an easy way to scale power, but in reality many standard power supplies are not designed for active current sharing. One supply ends up doing most of the work and the others are underused. That's not a reliable solution and it's also the reason why power supplies with dedicated current sharing circuitry exist. The second mistake was that the power supplies I used couldn't be set to a specific constant output current without additional electronics. Without proper current control, you don't really decide how the battery is charged. One of the power supplies just kept delivering its highest possible output current, limited only by its internal protection. To understand why controlling the current matters, we have to know one key principle about battery charging. Charging normally starts in a constant current mode. The current is explicitly limited while the battery voltage rises. Controlling this current limit is what lets us decide with how much power and speed the battery is charged. Once the target voltage is reached, the charger transitions into constant voltage mode. In this phase, the current naturally tapers off while the voltage is fixed. That is really important, but my setup couldn't reliably do it. There was no clear constant current, constant voltage transition and no real control. It wasn't actually a charger, it was just 3 power supplies and a few other electronics hooked up to a battery. I learned a lot from this. Mostly that I probably shouldn't just trust myself blindly with every decision that I made about this project in the past, but it is what it is. It was time for a restart. I started by looking for power supplies that would meet my new requirements. I wanted a single, larger supply. In the end, that would produce a more compact design, fewer wires and fewer things that could go wrong. It was also essential that it supported constant current and constant voltage mode, but with the ability to adjust the current dynamically while the supply is under load. I ended up with 2 options, a cheaper 2 kilowatt supply and a more expensive 1.5 kilowatt unit. The idea was to test the budget version first and keep the higher quality one as backup that I could send back later. So I started again. First, I tested the 2 kilowatt power supply. It seemed quite promising, at least from a power electronics point of view.
The supply delivered what I needed, but once I integrated it into the system, problems started to show up. Not in the power stage itself, but in the control electronics.
The 2 kW power supply generated significant conducted electromagnetic interference on the 230 volt AC power line. And the power supply for the controls, which is connected to the same power line, wasn't that happy about it. On the oscilloscope, I could see lots of spikes in the 5 volt rail which shouldn't have been there.
With low battery charging current, the system still worked.
But when I allowed higher currents to flow, my ESP32 was resetting randomly and the LED matrix flickered like crazy.
I tried to mitigate the problem.
I experimented with mains filters and additional filtering stages.
And with enough time, this likely could have been solved. But it didn't work right away, and fixing it properly would have taken more time than I was willing to invest.
So instead of fighting the power supply, I decided to exchange it. The 1.5 kW supply is properly documented and designed to meet latest EMC standards.
So I tested it, and that finally worked. To make you understand why the interference caused so much trouble, I need to explain what the microcontroller actually does.
It continuously monitors the battery temperature through sensors that sit inside the pack.
Only if everything is within safe limits, charging is enabled at all.
If no battery is connected, the system stays idle and the microcontroller shows the corresponding status on an LED matrix. Once charging starts, the matrix switches to a charging animation.
There are 2 operating modes.
In manual mode, the user sets the charging current using a rotary encoder. In automatic mode, the controller adjusts the current dynamically based on battery temperature.
The microcontroller also decides when charging is finished.
Once the current in constant voltage mode drops below a defined threshold, the power supply is switched off by a relay.
Otherwise, a small current would keep flowing and stress the battery over time. To control the charging current, the microcontroller communicates with the power supply.
I made this little circuit to convert the 3.3 volt PWM signal from the ESP into a clean 0 to 5 volt analog control voltage.
That signal directly defines how much current the power supply is allowed to deliver. And all of that is the reason why the microcontroller has to work reliably all the time without resetting.
At this stage, the electronics are wired using relatively long cables, which made testing much easier.
The downside is increased susceptibility to noise and grounding issues. A more finalized version would probably deserve a proper circuit board, but for a single unit this works well. So the electronics were ready, and I could finally move on to designing the new enclosure.
So I jumped into CAD once again to adjust the first version of the charger. I changed the rear panel to give the power supply fans a proper air intake and made the whole enclosure slightly lower and narrower. The additional fans, which were originally meant to cool the 3 separate power supplies, stayed in place. They now turn on if the power supply exceeds 40 degrees Celsius on the outside, but they don't have a huge impact anymore. I also moved the charging cable outlet to the other side to make room for the rotary encoder. The charging connector stayed the same. You might be wondering why it is so large and why it has so many pins. The reason is a little complicated in my case. Let me explain.
Almost every battery needs a battery management system to operate safely.
And in my setup, that system is not inside the battery, it's part of the charger.
To understand why that kind of works in my case, we need to take a look at what a BMS actually does.
But to do that, we have to talk about batteries first. A battery basically consists of cells in parallel groups. Within each parallel group, all cells share the same terminal voltage. To reach higher voltages, these parallel groups are then connected in series. But cells connected in series don't balance themselves or share the same voltage.
And this is one of the core problems a battery management system is supposed to handle.
It is connected to each parallel pack to keep all the cells at the same voltage. Without that kind of balancing, cell voltages would drift apart over multiple charge and discharge cycles. The result of that are over or undercharged cells.
But for the BMS to balance properly, it's preferable to have it connected to the battery permanently.
That's why, for most batteries, putting the BMS inside the pack is the best approach. That way, the battery is safe, robust, and independent of the charger or the load.
And that's also why I don't necessarily recommend copying the method that I used in this video.
So, why did I still end up with a solution that incorporates the BMS in the charger?
It comes down to the abilities and resources that I had when I was building the battery. At the time, I couldn't find an affordable BMS that would meet all of my requirements and fit inside the battery nicely. Instead of forcing a solution that didn't really fit, I decided to explore a different approach.
I ended up buying this simple and inexpensive BMS for some experiments. After using it for some time, I was quite impressed. It offers a wide range of features, can be accessed and configured via an app, and includes a nice display. The problem was that it is a fully integrated solution. The high current stage and the balancing circuitry are combined on a single board. This makes the BMS relatively large, and more importantly, its current rating is not sufficient to handle the discharge currents required for the surfboard.
However, charging currents in my system are much lower, and space inside an external charger is not a tight constraint.
That makes it possible to use the BMS specifically for monitoring and balancing during charging. Every charging cycle starts with a full check of the individual cell voltages before any current is allowed to flow.
If anything looks abnormal, charging is aborted immediately.
During discharge in the surfboard, several protection layers are active. There is a conservative low voltage cutoff for the absolute battery voltage, temperature monitoring, and fuse protection.
What this setup does not provide is per cell supervision during discharge. That is the fundamental limitation of this architecture.
But
there would be a solution for that as well. Dedicated cell voltage measurement in the surfboard is possible with a small additional circuit.
Through that, the system would shut down if undervoltage of a parallel pack occurs. In my case, that is unlikely to happen though, because the battery is balanced within every charging cycle, and with high quality cells, the differences that build up in one discharge cycle are very small.
Having a BMS inside the battery simplifies a lot of things. In the first place, that only one central battery protection and safety unit is needed.
But to be honest, the system that I have right now works really well for me. It does what it's supposed to do, and I can't complain about performance.
With that clarified, the role of the BMS and all those extra pins on the charging connector should make a lot more sense.
The pins carry the cables which are needed to monitor and balance the cells in the battery. After redrawing the charger in CAD, I could finally move on to bringing it to life. The 3D printer helped with the enclosure once again. For the panels, I did another round of CNC machining. Drilling all those holes was a bit of a nightmare, but once I started, there was no way back. And eventually, everything came together.
Now, this thing finally works like it's supposed to, and I am really happy about that.
It's capable of continuously delivering the full 1.5 kilowatts of power during the constant current phase.
That means that the battery is fully charged in under 3 hours.
If I want to have detailed information about the state of the battery, I can connect it to the charger and see the important values on the display or on my phone.
The charger itself doesn't have to be connected to the grid for that. For charging, it has to be connected to the grid.
I just have to plug it in and wait.
That was the absolute goal. And after a few wrong turns, that's exactly what this charger now makes possible. Thank you very much for watching this video and sticking around to the end. I really appreciate that. See you in the next one. I'll try to be back soon.